Often directors are convinced that for the sake of veracity, it's better to find a location that's real than to build one in the studio. This puts location managers in a bind and also stretches the talents of the set dressers too. For instance, this following example from a location manager, we can explain the trials and tribulations one goes through here. He says he finally saw Men in Black 3, and of course, there was one location that stood out, located in Chinatown. Wu is the Chinese restaurant all directors beg location managers to find. From the paper lanterns and intricate woodwork to the numerous fish tanks and detailed wallpaper. Throw in the hanging ducks in the window, and you've got every director's ideal Chinese restaurant filming location. Of course, this set dresser immediately knew that Wu's was fake, built from scratch on a soundstage. Why? Because this location does not exist in Manhattan. Literally every time this location manager is asked to find a Chinese restaurant, it's the same description. I want a place that's with really over the top Chinese decor, the director will say. Remember that one in Seinfeld? That'd be great. The key is red wallpaper, our director will tell us. We need a place with red wallpaper, with designs on the wallpaper too, maybe in gold. But red is key. Oh, and some woodwork. You know, like in Glengarry Glen Ross? That would be perfect. Hey, and be on the lookout for dragons. Golden dragons would be awesome. Remember the movie The Fisher King? But really, just go for that classic over-the-top look. You've probably never seen Mickey Blue Eyes, but wasn't there something in that like I'm describing? You know what I mean? Well, this location manager knows exactly what it means. There's only one problem. This is that your average Chinatown restaurant looks something like this. And here's another. And another. White walls. A few bits of ornamentation on a wall or two, some chandeliers, and that's it. Seriously, this is the norm. And try to convince a director of this, and they will look at you like you just moved to the city last week. Are you seriously telling me, they'll ask, that there isn't a single Chinese restaurant in all of Manhattan with red wallpaper and crazy ornamentation? Yes, that's what I'm telling you. And if you don't believe me, you probably have a heart attack if you told you a good number of New York Chinese restaurants look like this. This is a major problem when you run into scouting in New York. People assume New York City has everything, and when you tell them it doesn't, they think you're wrong and not doing your job. That isn't to say that New York doesn't have some really neat Chinese restaurants. Some of the epic dim sum places sort of have the right decor we're asked for. But they're ridiculously massive in size and very pricey to film, even if they'd consider it. So that's a definite no. Having shown the reality of most Chinese restaurants, you move on to options that, while not entirely meeting their description, have some really fantastic character. Like this restaurant, especially with the enormous tree in the back. Also with this place, which has a lot of great character without descending into the Orientalism on steroids restaurant that usually you're asked to find. Or how about this one up by Columbia? Sure, it's simple, but at least it has that intricate wallpaper, though not red. Maybe throw in a few golden dragon statues, and they're good. Directors will not like any of this. Why is there a tree in that first place, and why don't any of them have red wallpaper? Keep looking. But they inevitably come up short. As a last-ditch effort, directors will occasionally suggest they scout the Nam Hua Tea Parlor, confident that the place in business since 1927 must have the character we're looking for. Alas, while everybody loves Nam Hua, the interior looks more like a diner than a Chinese restaurant. Directors will usually be very frustrated at this point, but it has to be out there. That classic over-the-top Chinese restaurant you used to go to on the highway as a kid. And therein lies the problem. We're not on the highway, we're in New York. We don't know anything about the history of Chinese restaurants decor in America, but it wouldn't be surprised early on, part of the draw was in presenting patrons with an Epcot-like level of intense Orientalism. Not only were you dining, you're also going to an exotic vacation. Here's a 1906 picture of a Chinatown restaurant called Chinese Tuxedo, which is exactly what our directors are looking for, from a 19 restaurant review guide which describes this kind of establishment. Another option for our director is his now defunct classic, New York classic, the Port Arthur business through 1959. But those days are gone. Chinese restaurants don't need crazy decor anymore to convince New Yorkers that cuisine is worthwhile. And now, while we really wish that one holdover from the 1940s and 50s would have survived into the modern age as a historic relic, they're all gone, and no amount of scouting will bring them back. It's about this time that the director finally accepts the truth, and the decision is made to either go with one of the options that have been scouted or build it on stage. So here's what they scouted, and this is probably what they'll go with. But we don't blame directors for hating the plainer options that they have to pick from. White walls and minimal decor look absolutely terrible on film, and you never film in such a place. But that's why we bring the set dresser in to fill out with what the director imagines. And so what we see is not any real Chinese restaurant that ever existed, but a set dresser's dream of what the production designer wants and what the director envisions. And finally, on a side note, no one's ever been to a New York City Chinese restaurant with a guy like this.